Welcome back. In this video you will learn about primitive data types, variable declaration and variable initialization in Java. Variables are fundamental components in programming. They allow us to store, reference and manipulate data throughout the code. To understand how to use variables in Java, let's solve a simple task. So the task is the following. There are 20 students in a class. In the second week, 5 more students joined the class. You need to write a program to print out the total number of students in the class during the second week. Okay, this task is actually quite simple and you've probably already calculated the result in your head. But let's use variables to solve it. Before we do that, it's important to know that Java is a statically typed language. That means that each variable needs a defined type. For our task, we need a variable, or rather variables, that can store whole numbers, and the best type for that is int. So let's first declare a variable where we store the initial number of students. To do that, first we'll type a data type, which is int, then the variable name, let's call it initial students, then the assignment operator and the value, which is 20. One note here, we declared a variable and assigned a value to the variable on one line, but we can do it on separate lines, like that. First declaring the variable and then assigning 20 to the variable. In this case, it's much simpler to do it in one line. Now let's declare and initialize the second variable. Let's call it extra students. And we'll store the result in a separate variable. Let's call it total students. So in this line, we use the variable names initial students and extra students to reference the values of 20 and 5, and we use the arithmetic operator to add those two numbers together. And the result is assigned to total students variable. To print out the value of the total students variable, type as out and the name of the variable. Let's run the code. And the result is 25. The type int we used is one of the most basic data types, which are called primitive data types. In total, there are 4 data types which can be used to represent integer values. The first one is byte. Byte takes up 8 bits of memory and can store values from -128 to 127. Or, in other words, it's -2 in the power of 7 to 2 in the power of 7 minus 1. The next one is short. Short takes up 16 bits of memory and can store values from -2 in the power of 15 to 2 in the power of 15 minus 1. The next one is int. Int takes up 32 bits of memory and can store values from -2 in the power of 31 to 2 in the power of 31 minus 1. And the last one is long. Here we can see an error. Integer number is too large, and it means that we need to indicate that this is a long value, not an int. And we do that by adding L letter at the end of the value. So long takes up 40 bits of memory and can store values from -2 in the power of 63 to 2 in the power of 63 minus 1. Alright, so there are 4 types for integers in Java. Which type should you use? Use the int type, and if you need to store a long value which is out of int range, use the long type. Byte and short are not really commonly used data types nowadays, and some of the reasons for that are the following. Modern CPUs are optimized for working with 32-bit or 64-bit data types, and using 16-bit short or 8-bit byte often requires extra processing. In expressions, byte and short are automatically promoted to int before performing operations. So int is the default choice for integer values in Java, and that makes code easier to read and understand. Alright, so what if you need to store a decimal number? You can do it with 2 data types. One of them is double, double takes up 64 bits of memory, and another one is float. When you define float, add letter F at the end of the value. Float takes up 32 bits of memory. The type double has a better precision, and this is your first choice if you need to store a decimal number. And float type is less commonly used. So let's sum up what we have learned so far. We use variables to store values. Java is a statically typed language, so each variable needs a defined type. Use int or long types for integer values, and use double type for decimal values. In the next video, we'll cover 2 remaining primitive types, which are char and boolean. Wish you a pleasant day and stay tuned.